Hey people, welcome back to another brand new episode of Monday Manipulation. In this episode, I'm going to show you how I created this image, this photo. This won't be a step-by-step tutorial because that would be very long. Instead, will be a speed art. However, due to all the tutorials that I've showed you below, you can understand how to make this one. Now, this image I created keeping my world in mind. Yes, this place is Mars. I am from Mars. That's how the roads are here. The roads are on the clouds. You have balloons and you have people with rings around their head. They play all the time. They are all free and they love each other so much. Yes, that is Mars. You guys don't know how Mars looks. Alright, so without any further ado, let's get started.
Also, if you like my videos, then please do consider subscribing to my channel to support me. Thank you.
So first thing what I did was I created a background. I used a very light green color, a very light, like, and then I duplicated that background and made a darker green, a less lighter green. And using a cloud brush, I erased some parts to give that light look. Next, I brought in my clouds image. All these images are downloaded from Pixels. That is a free stock website, so I'll link that down in the description below. So I added my clouds, and using the same cloud brush, I erased some parts so that I could merge both the cloud layers together. This cloud brush is from the Imad brush preset. I'll link that in the description below. That's the brush preset that you need for everything. There are like literally hundreds of brushes there. So next what I did was I used curves adjustment to match my colors to the background and to match both the clouds together at the same color. So next I brought in my road image of the street. This is again from Pixels, and I used the mask. I used the pen tool to mask out the road. And then I used the same cloud brush to remove some edges and some parts of the road to give it the look that it's blending in with the clouds, like the clouds are covering the road. So yeah, and then I created a new layer, and with the same brush I created more clouds to blend it even more. And using the curves adjustment, I recolored the road. I color corrected the road to match the environment, the overall environment. Next I brought in another cloud layer, another cloud image. This is a very soft cloud, so I distorted to kind of match the perspective that I was going for. And next I rasterized that layer, and using the smudge tool I smudged the cloud to make it even more soft, to give it the look that it's peeling off the road there. So yeah. And I used hue and saturation to recolor that cloud image to match the overall environment. And I used blend if to kind of blend it with the road so that it's floating on the road. I removed some dark parts from there, and with the same cloud brush I erased some parts that I didn't need to, I didn't want. And I duplicated that same cloud image and I distorted it to match the farther level, the farther part of the road. And next I wasn't too happy with those colors of the road, so I again made some adjustments using hue and saturation. Next I brought in my subject, the woman and the daughter, and I used the quick selection tool, and with the AI I selected the subject, and I tweaked some of the parts where the selection wasn't perfect, so I made those perfect. I took my time But for this, I realized that the subjects have to be of a small scale, of small size, so some parts wouldn't be too visible. But I still took my time. I adjusted the size to make it look as accurate as possible and as realistic. Next, I created a new layer and for contact shadows. So I decreased my brush size and I created contact shadows between the shoes and the road. Next, I created another layer to give those a bit more shadows where the feet is a bit upper, and there are some shadows cast from that part. So yeah. And next, I duplicated my subject layer and changed the color to black to a very dark green color, and I distorted it so that we can show that the shadow is being casted from the light behind. There's a light source behind them and the shadow is being cast in the front. Next, I used warp tool to warp the image to perfectly match the shadow with the subject. And then I used Gaussian blur to blur the shadow and decrease the opacity to blend it way better with the scene. Next, I use the cloud brush to kind of remove some of the clouds from their feet, because when they are walking, the clouds are moving a bit away. They are not interacting with their legs. So some sort of like that. Next, I added more shadows, the cloth shadows that can sometimes be contracted to the ground. Next, I used lasso tool. I wasn't too happy with the selection because there were some rough edges. Like you can see, there were some very black edges. So I used the polygon lasso tool to kind of remove all those. I removed some of the hair, some parts that I didn't need, some parts that weren't too necessary for the image. So I removed all those. Yeah, now that I was happy with my subject and everything that was selected, so I moved on. Next, I used the blur tool to blur the shadows a little, and then I came back to my subject and I used curves to color match the subject to the background, to the overall environment. Next, I created a new layer and I added some more clouds to the front above everything. I kept on experimenting with the colors to see which are clouds I would like, and I did that. Next, I created a new layer and clipped it to my subject layer because I wanted to add those highlights. Next I brought in the air balloons and I placed them right in front to blend in with the clouds. I placed them behind the clouds and I duplicated them, and I placed them right on this side, and I duplicated more, and using the cloud brush I erased some parts to give it like those balloons are coming from below us and they are going right above in the clouds. They are like half of them is in the clouds still. And I color corrected the balloons to kind of fit in with the scene. And I duplicate it again to place it a bit more far from our subject and our point of view. Next I use Gaussian blur for the clouds to give it that depth of field. So next what I did was, using the shape tools, I created the rings. I created a ring around the head of the mother and adjusted the size and the position and the rotation of them. Then using the brush I removed some hair, some ring from the hair so that it looks like the ring is going right around the head of the mother. And I duplicated that shape layer, that ring layer, and gave a Gaussian blur to give it the look, to make it look that it's like glowing, and made a couple of duplicates to make it glow even more. And then I made an overall duplicate of all the rings and placed it right around the head of the little girl. Next I went to my air balloons and I added some highlights on the edges of the balloons. Then I went to the other balloons and I did the exact same thing. Next I went to the cloud layer, the cloud which is more far from us. And I use a tilt shift blur to give it that depth of field that we gave the parachute, so that they both match the same blurriness. Next I tweaked the balloons a little more because I wasn't too satisfied with how they looked earlier. Next I brought in my light overlay, a flare overlay. These textures are downloaded from Texture Labs. Next I brought in another flare overlay to give it that, to make it as my sun. So I place it right behind everything and I put it into screen blending mode. Next I brought in a particle overlay, and I played it around. I experimented a lot with this to see where it fits best. Next, I added some highlights right below the ring layer on the head to give it that emission, to give it that illumination from the ring. Next, I merged all the layers into one and gave the final color correction camera from in camera raw filter. And I used the curves to change the colors and to make everything pop more. I used a little bit contrast, and I used sharpen to sharpen the overall image, and change some of the hues and luminosity to kind of see which looked best. So yeah, this is a final image. I hope you really liked it. This is the same process, same editing process that I showed in my previous videos, in the previous tutorials. I didn't make this a tutorial because this was a very long video and a very long editing process. And I also know that seeing my previous videos, you already know how the process of this is, how the editing of this is. You know most of it. So yeah, this was today's video. I really hope you liked it. And if you did like it, then hit the like button below. It will help my video stand out. And subscribe to my channel to support me, and hit that bell icon so that you can get notified every time I upload a new video. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.